As the search for the I-75 shooting suspect continues through Kentucky's rugged terrain, we talked with an expert in wilderness tracking.
Craig Caudle has authored 8 books on survival and has trained both reality TV shows and federal agencies. New at 6, WKYT's Jessica Umbro and photojournalist Darnell Crenshaw got a closer look at his tracking techniques.
This is the deer track right here. This is the point of the toe. These are the 2 hooves right here.
A short walk into our hike, and Craig Caudle already found the wooded grounds disturbed. His head is up, but he's got a keen eye for the forest floor.
Yeah, you can see over here that this is lighter versus this area over here is darker. That's because that dirt has been overturned and some of the moisture is being indicated there, which means it's relatively new.
Or disturbed?
Or disturbed, yeah.
To be clear, we are in Clark County, a long distance away from where trackers are currently hunting down couch. But this is an example of what law enforcement is looking for as they comb through the rugged terrain. Caudle grew up in the Kentucky outdoors studying how to track people and animals, and now he teaches people how to survive in wooded areas like this one through his Nature Reliance School. Caudle has taught tracking techniques to some of the active law enforcement who are looking for couch, saying those trackers are some of the best in the world.
He's not a ghost. He can't float across the face of the earth. He is going to step on the earth every single step he takes. And every single step he takes, he's going to be leaving sign.
Caudle admits it is difficult to track someone in the thousands of acres of rough and rugged Kentucky terrain.
It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. It is. I would agree with that. It's difficult, but there's a process that those gentlemen or those operators are trained in how to do that.
We asked Caudle why he's not a part of the tracking team since he's trained some of them.
The people that are out there hunting a fugitive to apprehend them and put them in jail have a lot of tools in their toolbox. I have that one, maybe 2 or 3 others that I could assist them with.
In Clark County with photojournalist Darnell Crenshaw, Jessica Umbro, WKYT.
And Caudle advises that hikers in the search area should stay fully aware of their surroundings.
And you can follow updates on the manhunt on the WKYT News app. Just scan the QR code that you see right there on your screen. It will send push alerts to your phone notifying you of breaking news. You can also track the very latest on WKYT.com.